Well, greetings, everyone. This is Gordon Carkner, Dr. Gordon E. Carkner, Meta-Educator with UBC postgraduate students, an author and a blogger. And here's the dissertation that has inspired some of this material: critical examination of Michel Foucault, his moral self, in dialogue with Charles Taylor. So today I'd like to run this seminar on the genius of truth. Why is truth important and powerful? So what is truth? The Latin is quid est veritas. The primary lens through which many individuals interpret the world today is actually relativistic or subjective. One might call this anti-realist. Under this view, there is no truly real world outside of my perceptions and interpretations, only a compilation of several different constructions by different actors and intellectuals. These actors often conflict with each other and duke it out for dominance. But are we to be as cynical as philosopher Richard Rorty from Berkeley? Is truth nothing more than what you can get away with? This is close to nihilism, where no truth is available at all. Well, in this presentation, I want to argue or defend the strong thesis that there is such a thing as truth, and that it matters both intensively and extensively. We desire to know truth for its own sake, for the treasure that it is, and for its life and societal benefits. Truth is both powerful and transformative. It's good for our mental health. So at the end of the day, we really don't want to minimize truth. How does this approach differ from perspectivalism, which is popular today? Individual perspectives, of course, can be biased, prejudiced, or misinformed. But this does not mean that truth itself is relative or merely subjective. That does not follow. The internet today provides us with a plethora of opinions on almost any subject, as well as many extreme, overwhelming conspiracy theories. This can lead to societal fragmentation and tribalism, as we witnessed in our political theater. Ludwig Wittgenstein speaks of the importance of language games that shape our culture. But the ideology of perspectivalism is the view that no one can have the truth. It's a form of relativism. It means that we're all destined to fight for our viewpoint in a pluralistic world through global competition. And that, in a sense, is a Darwinian concept of truth. What about truth and correspondence? Is this a way to cut through the confusion? There are currently a variety of tests for truth: coherence, livability or existential value, fruitfulness, historical reliability, scientific verifiability. These are some of them. But a good place to start in this discussion, I believe, is one of the oldest. Really, it goes back to Aristotle, the most established and respected theories of truth: correspondence. It offers a fundamental building block towards clarity and certainty. Language philosopher John Searle believes it to be quite viable, since correspondence is the background presupposition of all human language, all propositions. It is also fundamental to science. In science, we seek to map reality as it is in the physical world, the time, space, energy, matter world. When we actually speak in our daily discourse, we assume that we are saying something related to or matching reality, or what is the case. We can seek to verify it through hard evidence and probability, but we are focusing on reality. But why do we need truth? Maybe we should ask that question first. In our day and age, in our late modern age, are lies, fiction, myths, fantasies not enough for us? Well, here's what correspondence theory says. Correspondence theory recognizes the bias or slant of my subjective perspective as the knower, yet that doesn't automatically make it incredible. Critical correspondence theory does not buy into the reductionism of perspectivalism. Realism is the actual background presupposition of much discourse, not just science, and an important assumption for normal correspondence. Here's the assumption. There is a real world and real people with whom I have dialogue and relationship, and I can come to know it truly and accurately. Perspectives represent various degrees of success at capturing reality, and we can respect the complexity of various interpretations. This is also called hermeneutics. In the end, we cannot flourish on lies, confusion, distortions, illusions or delusions, bad scholarship or fraud. They exploit people and promote injustice and oppression, even theft. Think of Ponzi schemes. Lies lead astray, make us slaves. Think propaganda. So we should never give up on truth. We need truth like we need air, water, and food. Truth is the very foundation of our existence, our freedoms, of our clear thinking. But we might want to talk about this issue of truth and power because it's always in the back of our minds, especially after Michel Foucault and late modern thought. Michel Foucault in his middle period wrote about power knowledge, or how truth is implicated with power. And I think this was deeply insightful, but it came to a kind of dead end for him in the middle period of his work. So he had to rethink his whole project. And so his third period, which I covered in my PhD on ethics and freedom, was a rethinking of personal and moral agency. On the other hand, can we not speak truth to power and call for accountability from our leaders? This is a key dimension of any democracy, free market, or human rights that we want to preserve. We never want to reduce truth to power or violence as an empire ideology. Think of the ancient Roman Empire. We know that all dictatorships want to control the message, keep people submissive, and present the autocrat as the savior, the fearless leader. Truth can be an effective antidote to such abuse of power. This is a whole discussion we might make in another time, but that's a little bit of background on truth and power. Now we have some important qualifications or sensibility around this quest for truth. Truth itself must be distinguished from how we arrive at it, the effects truth has on an individual person, and our personal limitations. Nuances are important in the quest for truth. First of all, ontology, or what we call metaphysical reality. It is absolute, universal, objective, exclusive, eternally engaging, and one. That's what we also call the really real. Truth tests. Our approach to truth, our epistemology or methodology, is influenced by culture, biology, political environment, and upbringing. So we should be self-critical in our quest and claims for truth in order to better recognize it and strive towards objectivity. Degree of conviction. This comes under the categories of logical certainty, mathematical certainty, moral certainty, relevance, robustness, plausibility. These categories are all vital, and we won't cover them all in this session. And finally, limits of the knowing or believing agent. This involves such variables as the level of intelligence and education, background beliefs, gender, values, upbringing, mentoring experience, the influence of ideologies such as neo-Marxism in late modern thought, critical theory. But this should not deter us from making truth claims, defending what we are sure to be true, and scrutinizing the claims of others. We can do this with humility. So I think this is foundational to dialogue and healthy public debate. So coming out of this, I want to show that metaphysical objectivity, that is reality itself, is compatible with epistemological subjectivity. I think that the worst intellectual move is when someone slips into the trap of metaphysical, metaphysical subjectivity, or what's called anti-realism, as we saw with Richard Rorty. That leaves us with nothing but my truth versus your truth. and we're isolated as individuals. In some parts of academia, truth or reality is thought to be an individual's creation. But is that actually how life works? Can we live as if everybody's truth or creation of truth is accurate or true to life? Now, here's another category called critical realism, which is very important to correspondence theory. Within correspondence theory, it lies midway between naive realism, that is, I know reality exactly as it is, and epistemological skepticism. I could never know anything objectively or with certainty. Critical realism means that we continue trying to get a more accurate perspective, that is, a better map of reality concerning the matters in front of us to get closer to the truth, what one might call credible verisimilitude towards the truth. It allows for progress in our knowledge and the toughening of theories over time as scholarship and science grows. We can even have a paradigm shift once in a while, as in Galileo Galilei. We are dealing in degrees of objectivity, probability, plausibility, and fitness. Not all beliefs or theories contain equal veracity or truthiness, I guess you could say. At best, in both scholarship and science, we try to move towards the better and best explanation as judged by criteria such as parsimony, elegance, coherence, and explanatory power. But we're open to being proven wrong or corrected through later work, more experimental evidence, that is, better data or documents. See Paul Allen's thoughtful video on this YouTube channel on critical realism. Sorry, I just want to move back to that slide. So now we move to the role of worldviews. This is the big picture frame of our assumptions. Often we're not aware of our own assumptions, and Plato said that the unexamined life is not worth living, but I would say the unexamined assumption makes us weak in terms of our position on truth. It's now clear that there is no such thing as a view from nowhere. Interpretation is always involved and assumptions are always brought to the table. Sir John Polkinghorne, an eminent Cambridge physicist and theologian, favors critical realism in both physics and theology. He's been a great advocate of the dialogue between physics and theology, between science and theology. He holds that believers within a religion can retain their presuppositions while comparing their views with competing claims. This truth game works well on a university campus, especially where students or faculty respect each other. In campus dialogue, even the best reasons for a faith conviction will impress some and not others, but good evidence can offer a sign to the seeker, pointing them in a helpful direction towards the truth, I guess you could say. People of all persuasions eventually realize they must grapple with their basic assumptions, stand behind their worldview, and answer tough questions on internal contradictions. For example, if you hold to human dignity on one hand and philosophical materialism on the other, they seem to clash with each other. So at the end of the day, which worldview, religious or secular, makes the best sense of the evidence or the problems in front of us? For example, the human suffering. This requires courageous honesty and openness, but together we can scrutinize views objectively with criteria such as unity, relevance, coherence, laid out by James Sire in his book, The Universe Next Door. So just to give you an example of this, I'd like to look at a quote on science within a larger frame promoted by a top physicist from England, Tom McLeish. So let's zoom out with Tom McLeish. Science becomes a moral and spiritual exercise in personal and corporate healing and flourishing. The embedding of the scientific imagination within a much larger narrative of human advancement towards the divine constitutes a modern echo of the narrative described by Anselm and Grosseteste in their own medieval times, but emerging within the new experimental program of Enlightenment science. This is from his book, The Poetry and Music of Science. I'd also recommend to you the book, Faith and Wisdom in Science, in which he says that if you look back in history, you can kind of find a philosophy and a theology of science. Einstein resonates with this and says scientific thought is actually a development of pre-scientific thought. So in this context, in this overall discussion, what is responsible Christian faith? What is the resonance between faith and reason regarding truth? Well, in light of our quest to understand truth better, what constitutes responsible, thoughtful Christian faith? The truths of the faith, non-trivial truths about God, and one could say about humans in the world, should never be seen as merely stepping stones built on the conclusions of reason alone. A mistake was once made by many scholars who fell under the thrall of rationalism. Okay, we want to look at three categories: faith, revelation, and reason, and then give an example. Faith flourishes in a healthy engagement with reason, as we have demonstrated in our YouTube video seminar. Can we make peace between faith and reason? The grounds of faith are founded in God's revelation to humanity, his great speech acts in creation, scripture, and the incarnation of Jesus Christ. These epiphanies offer breakthrough insight into the profound Judeo-Christian story. It is essentially public truth for all to examine, as Leslie Newbigin talks about in his book, Public Truth. Then revelation. Revelation offers enrichment to human reason, not constriction. Having faith does not stretch the shape of truth in a direction that is unnatural to it. It rather strengthens and clarifies what people naturally desire to know about themselves and the world. Another way of putting this is just human wisdom, or wisdom for humans. And then reason. Reason, on the other hand, helps us understand more deeply the assumptions and identity conditions of the faith, making it more resilient, relevant, and transformative. Reason interprets the tradition handed down through scripture and the church, informing also our personal experience of God. This is the work of theology. And volumes of scholarship support these foundations and a significant apologetic discourse. If you'd like a good example of the interface between truth, faith, and reason in science and theology, we recommend Alistair McGrath's excellent book, A Fine-Tuned Universe. And I'll show some other titles in the last couple of slides under resources. What I want to say is that faith, under these conditions, is a rational step into the light, not a blind leap into the dark, which is sometimes the stereotype. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. I came into the world to bear witness to the truth. Strong statement. What did he mean? Is it reasonable to follow him and trust his claim to offer transcendent truth about God, ourselves, and the world? Big question. Faith is certainty in the direction of, but sometimes beyond the evidence. It's actually part of a journey. According to a long tradition of weighty Christian apologetics, we are sure that faith is neither irrational nor anti-rational. It doesn't go against the evidence. Faith involves both top-down insights, such as revelation, and bottom-up inquiry, such as scientific reason, historical verifiability, and philosophical soundness or reflection. So faith is not a blind leap in the dark without or against the evidence. It must be believable, coherent, make sense of life, society, and the world. At its core, the Christian faith is based on the redemptive life, death, and resurrection of Jesus the Christ. And this involves correspondence, theory, and critical realism. So grappling with the Christian faith and its impact will always involve ongoing, rigorous intellectual investigation, as well as personal reflection. So says George Marsden says it well in The Outrageous Idea of Christian Scholarship. And in our forum, the Graduate and Faculty Christian Forum at UBC, we discuss this kind of thing all the time, the interface between faith and academic disciplines and cultural issues. So this is a vital part of the exciting edge of faith and the developments in theology. Eminent Notre Dame philosopher Alvin Plantinga, in his book Knowledge and Christian Belief, shows that truth plus warrant, or very firm belief, are the keys to real knowledge, or what we call knowledgeable belief. I'm sure you can find a video by him on that topic on YouTube. So now we want to examine the working worldview assumptions. This helps us discern the truth weightiness of our position. Scientists are familiar with evaluating their theories through multiple lines of criteria. For example, prominent South African mathematician George Ellis uses 4 standards for strong scientific theories. Simplicity, beauty, accuracy in prediction, verifiability, and explanatory power. That is, the capacity for giving the most adequate account of available data. Cambridge University philosopher of science Ernest McMullen, who has inspired Paul Allen in his PhD work, also is a champion of critical realism. He values the following criteria: predictive accuracy, internal coherence, external consistency, unifying power, fertility, and simplicity. All of these criteria are exceedingly helpful for mapping reality. In the same way, looking at the Christian worldview or Christian faith, it often involves different criteria. So worldviews offer a map of the whole, answering such questions as what is ultimate, what is a human, what is the character of the natural world, the meaning of life, and the basis of morality. Such a hermeneutical map situates the visible world within a larger, invisible, transcendent whole. Truth seekers are encouraged to think both ontologically and epistemologically. That's a mouthful. Ironically, we all have a metaphysical perspective, even infamous atheist Richard Dawkins, which involves inescapable faith, even though Dawkins feels that he is working with science and fact, he's actually starting from a position of faith. One might say the unexamined worldview is weaker. And finally, on Christian truth and philosophy, I think it's important to see the compatibility between Christian truth and best philosophical thinking. No truth of reason is expected to contradict the truths of faith. For example, the 3 laws of logic: non-contradiction, excluded middle, and the principle of identity. I was delighted to discover this my first year of graduate school in Chicago. In this sense, philosophy is compatible with biblical truth. And Alvin Plantinga says this: currently, there is a virtual renaissance in Christian philosophical scholarship in the Anglo-American world. Truth from a Christian perspective is an invitational absolute that applies to all people, all times, everywhere. It's objective, true regardless of who believes or doesn't believe it, eternally engaging, never exhausted, unified and systematic, never self-contradictory, and an end in itself, not just a pragmatic means to an end or a personal fantasy. This is a bold statement of the rigor of Christian truth from Thomas Aquinas, a medieval scholar, and it's mediated through Norman Geisler, who was one of my mentors in Chicago. One can unashamedly believe Christianity as truth and still engage in argument and evidence both for and against. This is worldview dialogue. This is the essential aspect of worldview dialogue. The Christian religion is not reducible to religion. We can use reason to defend the faith's plausibility, integrity, and relevance. We can also ask thought-provoking questions of others, of our interlocutors. Christian faith at present is a lively interlocutor for modern philosophy. So we have 4 conclusions from our discussion. So we've seen how truth is important, objective, and powerful. It's not merely something we invent or construct out of self-interest. Truth also has a claim on us and our choices. Correspondence theory and critical realism have helped us understand it more clearly. It's a wonderful invention to move closer to the truth with effort, research, and reflection. That's partly the foundation of the modern university, is a truth-seeking institution. Christian truth is compatible with scientific, historical, and philosophical truth claims. Not all of those truth claims, of course. There are conflicts with Christianity within philosophy, history, etc. Seeking the truth is worthwhile and can fruitfully change lives for the better. Worldviews assist us in this task of examining truth claims or truth claim frameworks. And finally, we need more commitment to the truth in our culture to avoid corruption, injustice, and fraud. Truth is a boon for society, for peacemaking and international relations. So I encourage you to discuss this with, material with a friend. And here are some resources that will help you dig into the topic in more detail. And I won't read through all of these, but you can stop the slide and copy down or take a screenshot of these resources. I found them eminently helpful in shaping this discussion and also shaping my own worldview as a critical thinker who puts himself within the Christian worldview, but is in dialogue with all kinds of other thought. One of my mentors, I would say, is Charles Taylor. And here I recommend his book, A Secular Age plus the Language Animal. I used him as an interlocutor with Michel Foucault in my PhD dissertation. And recently, a brilliant fellow that discovered is Tom McLeish in these two books, Faith and Wisdom in Science, The Poetry and Music of Science, which talks about the interface between science and humanities. Okay, that's it for this presentation. And I hope this has been helpful and insightful and clarified some categories for you. We'll produce more videos along this line to encourage people to do some serious reflection and thinking about truth, the Christian faith, and the world. Thanks.